Welcome to Café Technika.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, professionals of all ages. I have a wonderful guest today on Café Technika, somebody that I've known a very long time. Christopher Romaine, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Tom. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, it's been a long time from the beginning of my professional career.
Yeah, man, we go way back, right? Back to Creative Realities. Back in Fairfield, New Jersey. You and I were both much younger men.
Yeah.
Starting our careers, right?
Yeah.
But you have a crazy great story, man. Like, your story is absolutely amazing. I would say, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about how you got there, because I feel like your journey to getting there was very inspirational.
For sure. Yeah. So again, I'm Christopher Romaine, a major account executive, Palo Alto Networks today in the Los Angeles metro area. But it is a very funny story, very humble beginnings. I started in college. I was working in the restaurant industry, and I worked at Macaroni Grill, Romano's Macaroni Grill. And I had a table full of leadership from Creative Realities come in. And at the end of the meal, I was given a business card. And essentially on the back of the business card, it says, "You've got talent and we recognize it." And then shortly after, I reached out asking for an internship. And here we are today, all the way to 2025. So fast forward. And again, professionals in technology. But who would have thought?
You literally have the story from the movie Waiting, but it was like in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So like when you started that, right? Like, obviously you're in college, you're just starting everything out. Like, you have no idea what you want to do, right? Like, did you have any idea that your career was going to kind of put you where you are today?
I had absolutely no idea. I knew when I went to college that I wanted to get into some type of professional sales or communications business. I knew I wanted to be a business person. And I knew I had the ability to build relationships really well. And I learned that about myself in the restaurant industry. Whether it was, having regulars that came in and asked for me specifically, or this situation where I was essentially recruited to work for a company while, waiting the table. It's definitely something that I just look back and think, wow, the writing was on the wall. I should have known. But yeah, I mean, initially I had no idea. And here we are today, which is just hilarious.
That's amazing. Well, and you also like moved around a bit, right? Like, you've had experiences in different businesses. Like, so we started at a digital signage company together. But like, your career has led you in different spots. Like, highlight some of that stuff. Like, I feel like the journey that you've taken is really unique. Like, no, I don't think a lot of people have that experience.
It is super unique. And thanks for saying that. It's kind of funny where I went from the restaurant industry to Creative Realities, and I was doing RMA coordination for all of the Optiplex 740s coming back from some of those customers that Creative Realities had, like Supercuts and Sport Clips, and some of the stadiums, the Ad Space Mall network, at GameStop. Who could forget GameStop? And essentially, I was, calling Dell regularly and getting techs to come out and fix those computers and then send them back into the field. And one of the things I learned about myself was I was literally calling a tech one day, and then the next day they'd show up and fix 10 to 15 computers. And it was just so funny, the power of making a phone call and then just building a relationship with those techs. And there were a ton of them. But I knew every single one of them by name, and they knew me, and they knew what was needed when I called. It was always a broken Optiplex 740 or Mac that'd be running for way too long. But from there, essentially, I, was in college, I graduated, and I went back into the restaurant industry thinking, maybe I'll be a restaurant manager, or, even more, own a restaurant or something like that. And then I realized I don't want to do that. But when I really clicked to knowing I was going to be in sales, there was a competition at a restaurant I worked at. And it was essentially selling certain bottles of wine and selling, it was called the Landry Select Club card. And I'd won every competition month after month after month. A matter of fact, there was someone who was a wine rep and said, whoever sells the most of the Chicana brand of wine will give you $100 gift card. I'm still waiting for that $100 gift card. But needless to say, I actually, I won those competitions, and there was really no competition, but that's why I knew that sales was where I needed to be. And then from there, it's kind of funny. I went to a company called YP.com, and most people, our age and maybe older know it as the Yellow Pages. But I wasn't selling the physical book, which was used as a doorstop or a booster seat in cars for many people. But I was actually selling YP.com and then Google AdWords. So I was selling online marketing to small and medium-sized businesses throughout the tri-state area. And that was cool, but I knew there was more, and that, it was a good place to start, grind my teeth, and really understand sales and the basics. And then from there, I actually got an opportunity to move all the way to Portland, Oregon, which was just hilarious to move across the country, but specifically Portland, Oregon. That made it fun and interesting. I knew nothing about Oregon. I had never visited before, but I had opportunity actually working with someone that we worked with at Creative Realities. And then from there, I ended up working at a company called Thomson Reuters in their legal software department, selling, across the Pacific Northwest through Portland, Seattle to Anchorage, Alaska. It's crazy. I never thought I would end up in Alaska selling, legal software. But, there I was getting off of a plane in Anchorage, and, essentially a foot plus of snow with wingtips on, gel in my hair, 3/4 length jacket, and a suit. I'll never forget, I walked into a 7-Eleven to get gum and a water bottle, and the guy behind the counter said, "Are you a politician?" And I said, "No, I'm just here for work. Lots of law firms." And he's like, "Oh, I thought you were running for office." And I said, "No, I'm actually just here for work." So from there, I actually ended up getting an offer within the same company to manage a territory in the Southern California region. So I had from Santa Monica to San Luis Obispo, essentially. And it was great. I wasn't on a plane as much, and I got to really understand the territory of what is Southern California. But then I realized I want to get back into technology, and I think that's where it's at. And I think there will always be jobs to be had, especially in sales and technology, because it's forever changing. And so I had a friend of mine show me his W-2, and it was this massive W-2. And I said, like, "What are you doing? And how did you get to that?" And he was like, "Tech sales, man, tech sales." And so that was really the impetus for me to make the change. And I went to a company called Rubrik, selling backup recovery and DR, which 3 years later, fast forward, IPO'd. And so that was really cool, to be part of that company and then see it IPO. And then from there, I decided to make a change and get into, cybersecurity at its core, and join Palo Alto Networks, which essentially is the largest global cybersecurity company out there today. So here we are now, but it's definitely been a journey. And now I'm married with 2 kids, a house and a dog in Southern California. So who would have thunk it? But that's where I am today. So it's been.
Listen, man, the work ethic and the fact that you were able to connect dots like that, like, you should feel really proud of yourself. And like, I think you've done what a lot of people would love to do, but they just don't want to put the time in. Like, they don't understand that it's like, hey, it's the last thing. It's the connections. The fact that you're like, hey, I was talking to Dell technicians, like, that is something that matters to me. Like, I think a lot of people lose that in the noise, and you were able to see those like tea leaves. And I I'm proud of you, but I also, I think you should feel really proud of yourself because of where you got yourself. And in that journey, like, lots of tech stuff, right? Like you've touched technology as a technician, you've touched technology from a sales position, like you've had to interface with technology people. Like, what does technology look like to you on a daily basis? Like, how much are you using it and interfacing with it? Like, what would you say, your involvement is?
Totally. I use technology on a daily basis. I just want to rewind because I love what you just said there. I think the one thing for me that really took me all the way to where I am, I always say I have a PhD, persistence, heart, and desire. And that's where I am. That's why I am where I am today. But
Yeah.
in terms of technology being, essentially what I use every single day at work and what I sell, there's some things that I really use pretty regularly. I use a tool called Bamboo. It's great. It's constantly helping me post on LinkedIn with relevant topics that are, essentially on cybersecurity, being in front of my customers and prospects on LinkedIn every single day. And there's always, it's great. And it definitely helps creating a cadence for yourself and getting yourself out there on LinkedIn in front of your customers and prospects who, essentially wouldn't know you outside of hearing your content or seeing your content on LinkedIn. I think another tool that I use a ton would be Salesforce, of course. For me and what I do every single day, it's realistically using that CRM to stay on top of customers and, follow them throughout their buying journey and help them get to where they want to go. And also just keeping leadership abreast of everything that's going on in my business. I think that's really important, especially when you look at sales from a business perspective. It's really about being good at forecasting what's coming in to the business, because that goes all the way up the chain. And one, inaccurate forecast on a team of, let's just say 7 people, if every single person had an inaccurate forecast, $100K, $700,000, that's one team. By the time it gets up to the CRO, think of how much money is being inaccurately forecasted. So I think Salesforce, which leads me to another tool I like to use here at Palo, which is Clary. It all speaks to itself within, the different internal systems, but they really do help me in my day-to-day, just staying organized and then prioritizing what I need to get done for the day, for the week, for the quarter, for the year.
Yeah. Chris, you sound a lot like a sales manager, man. Like you're the tools, the way that you're using them, like super smart stuff. I live and breathe sales forecasting and accounting and stuff like that on a daily basis. And the fact that you're plugged into that, like, most salespeople aren't. They think it's a pain in the ass. So it's like, the fact that you're using it is pretty interesting. Do you think that there's like a lot of distraction in that? Like, how do you keep it from consuming your day or taking up a significant part of your day and like using it as a tool and not necessarily a crutch or even, worse, that it's distracting you?
Yeah. I think it's great because it's not, a text message coming directly to my phone. It's something that I can control, when I go in and when I check. I do keep reminders on my calendar so I can go in and, remember when to update certain forecasts and, customer notes. I think it's super useful, especially with 2 kids running around. Very nice. And keep you prioritized. So that's really, where I sit with that.
Are you using any AI tools? So like AI is such a huge topic now, right? And like I just got back from a conference with QuickBase and, huge topic. Everybody's talking about it. I know that in a daily basis, like me and my executive team, like we use ChatGPT, Copilot, like we're constantly engaging some of these AI tools. Like, are you tapping into that? Do you see that happening to you? Like what do you see?
Totally. I mean, I use AI on a regular basis when I hit a writer's block. So, for me in sales, a lot of what I do is outreach. So whether it's emails, LinkedIn messages, or cold calls, I always want to be succinct on the message that I'm sending. And so if I'm having a writer's block or I want to sound a little bit more polished in a certain area that, isn't my forte, I'll always, refer to Perplexity AI or ChatGPT to help me out if need be. And it's great. You can't really use it as your crutch, but if there's something that you want to say and for whatever reason you got 1 hour of sleep because you have an infant that's up every other hour all night long, and a toddler who's got night terrors randomly in the middle of the night, it's a great tool. So yeah, I like it. I use those solutions regularly, and it's funny, just a quick Palo Alto Networks plug. But
Yeah.
there's a tool within all of our solutions, an AI Copilot. So that is definitely changing the way that people, work, live, their daily routine. It's a big influence.
Yeah, we're the same way. Like, QuickBase has AI built into it, and that's a system we use for a lot of things. And same thing. Like, we're plugging into that, and we're using that to like automate certain things. And it's really cool to like stay on top of people and whatever. And I always wonder, like, is this positive or is it negative, right? Like, can you use it too much, or am I not using it enough? Because like some people you talk to and they're like, yeah, my whole day wraps around AI. And then other people, they're like, this totally derails my day. Like, I don't want it. And it's very interesting to see like different use cases and how people feel about it,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's got its pros, it's got its cons. But at the end of the day, you just have to use it in a way where there's enough balance between using your actual brain, and then using a machine learning, computer brain to get what you need to get done.
Yeah, right. It's like, so like, and I know you've tracked me, like, the whole tech shaman thing. Like, I always talk about like, hey man, it's, understanding the world before the internet, right? Like, did you grow up and understand what it was to have a rotary phone or a touch tone phone in the kitchen, versus having a phone at your hip the whole time? And like, that's how you grow up. Right. And I'm always interested in seeing, cause look, there's good and bad with both. Like, I've seen the new generation where like they think of things that we would never think of, right? Like they'll pull out their phone and do something and you're like, how did you do that? Like, I didn't even think to do that. And then on the flip side, like you'll have, them doing something, you're like, you're way overcomplicating this. Like, this could be a Post-it note on your desk, right? So it's like, how do you keep your life simple? Like, is there a trick to keeping your technology life or like, sales life simple? Like, what would you say to that?
A moleskin notebook, my friend. A moleskin.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. It's got these pages. They have lines on them. They're blank.
Yeah.
You write in them. No, I mean, for me, I totally agree with you. I think it's funny, like growing up, speaking to the yellow pages, I never thought I'd talk so much about it. But I remember, my dad or my mom sitting at the kitchen table and trying to accomplish something, and then trying to find someone and going and looking in a phone book. And then, now today when I'm trying to find something, whether it's professional or personal, I'm going to Google immediately, or I'm, saying, hey Siri, hey Alexa, do this, do that. And so, yeah, I think you just have to really find what works for you. But it's crazy to see the new generation not understand a rotary phone or the phone book, and realize that wasn't part of them growing up. So that wasn't an experience they had. It's cool because I feel like for me, I'm in between all of these different generations. So I've seen all the old school stuff. I've seen all the new school stuff. But for me, in terms of learning, like writing things down and then reading them back helps me retain information more. And so I remember my dad sitting at the kitchen table and making calls to people, and then, just taking notes in a moleskin notebook, and having a notebook, and it's just, it helped. So, there are a lot of other great tools, for notes and recording, but just helping me retain information. I am old school, and I do like to use, a basic tool like that, among many other tools as well. But it's definitely a classic thing for me. So,
look, it's so perfect because I did a talk yesterday with a company called ED&C. They're a design and engineering firm, and I had a line in there where I said, it's sort of like the pyramids, right? Like we say we lost that technology, and like we didn't know how they were built and how did these people do it, right? And the same thing goes for like the space race, right? It was like, yeah, we lost our ability to go to the moon for a while. And you're like, well, how the hell does that happen? And it's like, the answer is, we didn't teach the next generation about what they did. And it's like, hey man, like you need to know this to know that. And like, we just stopped talking about it. We let it go. But I think you're bringing up a great point where it's like, more successful people that I talk to use Post-it notes and moleskin notebooks. And like, they're like, I have to write it down. And you're like, you know what they don't teach people now? How to write things down and like how to write. They put the kids right on a computer, right? You're like, the kid has no idea what it is.
That's a great point. And I think, there is a lot of that missed. And technology is great for many reasons, but I think that's a miss. And that's where it is. I mean, going through class as a kid and going through like cursive and all of those things, like,
they don't teach it.
Writing 101. I mean, my kids have essentially a 21-month-old and a 1-month-old newborn. So my kids aren't in school yet. But yeah, I mean, like, is that something they're going to miss? Probably. So we're going to have to, teach them at home. But I think that's definitely a miss on technology, is that one tool I've always used is writing things down to retain it and then reading it back to myself. And just the act of writing it down helps you remember, at least for me. So.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. Well, so like that's a good kind of dovetail. So you have kids now, they're young, right? I have an 11-year-old son, and there's this generational divide, right? We're parents now, which is wild to say, but like, what are you seeing just in like how they're developing and like interfacing with technology on a daily basis? Like, what are you seeing with the kids where you go like, wow, that's way different than what I grew up with? Like, how do you feel about that? Tell me more about that.
No, that's a great question. Totally. We just had this conversation yesterday, my wife and I, and we're talking about posting a video on Instagram and something that my son did. And there's, sound to it, and he hears his voice play back, and I'm looking at the phone this way, but he sees that I'm looking at the phone. So he says, Mo, and he wants to see himself in the video. And then he sees himself in the video on my phone, and he starts hysterically laughing, or makes a funny face. And it's like that kind of thing. We never had that instant playback as a kid. And so
right.
I'm seeing, again, we try to limit screen time because my wife has done a ton of research on that. And I guess from her research, she's found that it's negatively impacts kids, being in front of a screen a ton. So we'll use it on, say a plane ride to Hawaii when there's no other tool and our son's going absolutely crazy. But yeah, he recognizes and understands the phone. Sometimes I'll see him walking around and, pick up something random, even like a banana, and say, hello. And me and my wife just laugh. Like, oh my gosh, he's imitating us. This is crazy. He understands technology. He'll pick up the remote and pretend it's a cell phone and start pressing the buttons. So, it's crazy what they pick up, but I think, the iPads, the iPhones, TV screens, they understand technology more than we know, even though a 21-month-old can't really voice that very well. It shows in what, he shows us, and always wants to see his face back on video again on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, look, I was not a big fan of like overdoing the technology with my son, right? And like I was super concerned about getting him a phone. We discussed that a lot. He just got it this year. He's 11. And then an article came out literally a couple of weeks ago, and they said that they did this big study, and the expectation of the study was to totally reinforce that like kids shouldn't be on tech, that it ruins, the psyche of them and whatever. And what they found was that the kids that had cell phones earlier were less depressed, more connected to their friends, that they were more well-adjusted with the way life works today. And like, it was a total 180. And I'm reading the article and I'm like, this is so surprising. Like, I can't believe that like they're actually disproving everything that we thought was right. And like, to me, that's so interesting that I'm like, wow, maybe I was wrong with this, and it's not so bad for them as long as you're being a good parent, right? Like, do you see anything good or bad? Like you're saying you're trying to limit, but like, where do you see like anything good or bad with them now where they can't go to sleep because they have the tech, or like, what do you see?
Yeah, it's kind of a trip. We've seen some content out there where you'll see a child who hasn't watched screen, an hour later, and has just played outside and played with toys or had, Lego blocks or whatnot. And then you'll see a video of a child after an hour of watching a screen. And, from at least our son, we'll see, sometimes he'll watch Miss Rachel or Bluey. And then after an hour, you take it away and it's like the sky is falling. And so I think at a certain age, it may not be great, but I kind of agree with you. I think as they get into, I got my first cell phone when I was a freshman in high school, and it was just to be connected to my parents if I needed a ride home from school or sports.
Yeah.
Which was great. And not everyone had a phone at that age. But I thought it was good because it kind of, it got me my first job. I was able to make calls to find my first job, which was I scooped ice cream at an ice cream place. And they happened happening. So instead of, going downstairs to the rotary phone there, I just jumped on my cell phone, called the place, and went in for an interview. But yeah, I think, let's just say like a freshman in high school and up, great. Any younger, I'm not used to that because I didn't have it, but who knows? Maybe it could be good. And with all the technology that are in schools today, they may be out of touch if they're not thrown into it. So you just got to find the balance, in my opinion. But
no, that's interesting. That's a good story, actually. Like, you wonder, like, because you had the cell phone, would your life have been different if you didn't have it at that age, right? Like, how much of a part did that play, right?
I'd be asked for
It's crazy to think.
Borrow their cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are you putting behind? So, like, do you often engage? Like, I'm assuming, like, being in sales, like, you're talking to everybody, right? You're talking to young people, you're talking to people that are at the end of their career. Like, how do you find that, like, talking to that generational divide? Like, if you're talking to somebody older or younger, like, how much do you play up or play down the technology? Like, you're selling tech, right? So I'm assuming, like, you're talking to somebody hip, but, like, I'm sure you see differences between, like, the older guys and the younger guys. Like, how is that?
Totally. So I'll just say that in majors, I have 5 accounts. And so it's interesting because certain accounts are more old school type businesses and certain accounts are newer businesses. So I'll give you an example. One of the accounts is in the metals industry, and they're great. And it's a business that's been around for a very long time. Another one is more related to video gaming, and it's not been around for as long, but it's a little bit of a different generation. And so you just have to make the tech make sense, and then find ways to build a relationship with the folks. They're in an economic buyer position. So some folks are into sports. I try to make my connections there. Some folks are into, the outdoors. It's really just finding what do I have in common with this person, and having the likability factor and building that relationship. But I think another piece of it too is no matter what generation they are, it's just having integrity and building trust with them, because I may be the same age as their kid. Or I may be the same age as them, but there's something to relate with someone always. And so it's just finding that way to relate with them, no matter if they're at the beginning of their career, the middle, or the end. And that's always been a strong suit for me. And I say that all the way back to the restaurant industry. And it was just kind of like, hey, where are you from? What do you do? What are you interested in? And just trying to build that bond.
That's pretty cool. I mean, look, it all goes back to, like, low tech. Like, you got to make that connection, right? Like, I always say to people, I did a talk at a school, and I said, you got to focus on what the technology isn't giving you. And that's like connection, purpose, feeling welcomed, feeling part of the crew. So it's like, that's the part that people are missing, and they're looking to technology to give that to them. And it's like, that's not what they want. They want to come out and hang out with Chris Romaine. Like, that's what they want to do, right? Like,
totally. And that's always been my, motto in sales is people buy from people they like. So you want to make sure that they like you first, because if they don't, they're not buying anything. There's a ton of technology out there. There's a lot of competition. And you want to make sure that they like you first, because if they don't like you, they're not even going to listen to you. And from there, once you have that buy-in and you've built a relationship, then you've earned the ability to gain their trust and have a conversation. But I always start there with building that relationship. And, again, no matter what the generation is, finding something in common with them where I can relate. And, there's always something that you can find in common with someone. As much as you may think there isn't, there's always at least one thing.
Yeah. No, look, I got a couple of good stories on that I tell people, but like so now, look, Chris Romaine, Roberto, we're aging, man. We're getting a little grays in the beard. Like, we're starting to become the older men here. Like, do you think you're still hip and in touch with all this stuff, or like, how do you feel about yourself? How do you keep the edge on what you're doing?
That's a great question as well. I mean, I try, social media is somewhat of an influence because you see things in real time that are hip and cool. And I try to stay connected to all, the online news sources. So I see what's going on within the technology space. I also happen to have a 21-year-old cousin who's at NJIT and also is really hip and cool. And he's a D1 lacrosse player and, full ride to school and all these things. And I see, him and I see the different generations and what I thought was cool and what he thinks is cool. And it's definitely interesting to see. But, I have my hair to the side like this, and some of those guys have what I like to call the broccoli hairstyle.
Broccoli hair.
It's also great. Great. It's also great.
Yeah.
Different generations. I know exactly what generation you are because you have the broccoli hair. I say that to my cousin.
Yep.
But no, that's how I try to stay hip. I try to stay connected with the younger folks, and even, in my line of work, we have what's called a BDR, an SDR, a sales development rep or a business development rep. And usually they're folks that are entry level within their career and technology. And they're literally making outbound cold calls, emails, and LinkedIn messages to get you business and get you in front of a customer. And those guys are always usually pretty young and hip cats. And, I get some advice from them too. But I'm so focused these days on family and kids and the wife that, I try to stay as hip as I possibly can professionally, but I'm getting close to those Nike Air Monarchs or the New Balance sneakers.
Yeah.
Glorious.
The Clark W. Griswolds.
Have 7 pairs of them, all grass stained.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm the same way. And like, what I found funny too, so I often will interface with guys towards the end of their career. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I've either been attracted or I attract like slightly older crews. And there's like a swagger that they have that I feel like we miss and everybody younger than us misses. And I pick up on some of the things that they do, even just like the way they speak or the way that they walk into a meeting. And like, I've found myself imitating some of that stuff from time to time. And it's shocking how well it works. Like, where you go like, these guys are really hip. Like, they just don't realize it. Like, they have no idea that this works like generationally, right? I find that very interesting. I almost feel like that's one of the things that's going to get lost,
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's one of those things where you just have to pass it on or try to the next generation.
Yeah.
Try to give them as many tips as you possibly can, but I hope it never gets lost. And I constantly try to learn from, whether it be the older generation, mine or the younger, what can I take out of their bag of tricks and implement for myself that will actually translate and not make it look like I'm trying to fit into a certain, group. And so just trying to take it and make it my own brand, really.
No, look, I agree with you. So like, I'm totally obsessed with this idea of like business advice and frameworks. And like, I follow Simon Sinek a lot and like Merlin Mann and all of these guys that have like ideas that have impacted my life. Like, do you have like a specific framework or business advice that you got that like, we're like, I'm going to live by this. And like, that's what's impacted my career the most?
For sure. So I'm definitely a fan of a couple of books. One of them I'm rereading again, The Qualified Sales Leader. So a great book on, essentially where I got the terminology like persistence, heart, and desire, the PhD. But that's been great in specifically being something speaking to tech salespeople. And really it's just the buyer's journey and the sales guy's journey or gal's journey, throughout the process. And that's been great. I think another, piece of literature, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective, People. And I think the principles that he's kind of put out there around being proactive, essentially being proactive, not being reactive, get in front of the people that you want to talk to, put information in front of them that's relevant to what they're doing on a daily basis, that they may not have seen on their own. And just scheduling time with whether it's customers or prospects, before they ask, because that's another part for me of building relationships. I think another one, is prioritizing. So prioritizing, what's urgent, what needs to get done right now, what can wait a little bit, and then what's something that may not necessarily need to be done this week. It could go to next week. because I think prioritizing my schedule really helps me be more efficient in what I do, which helps me just overall be more successful. And then I think ultimately at the end of all of that, whether it's internally working with coworkers or it's working with a customer or prospect, always seeking a win-win situation, for both of us. You never want to be in a business dealing where, you're absolutely, winning and no one's getting a benefit, being the customer or maybe a value-added reseller you're working with. You want everyone to win, because if everyone wins, they'll continue to want to do business with you in the future. And if they feel like you're a guy that's just coming in, taking a deal and ripping them off, they'll never want to work with you again, especially in a small community like Southern California and the LA metro area. It's so tight-knit and it's so incestuous. Everyone knows each other. And so brand is everything. So I would say those are principles that, I essentially try to follow in my day-to-day.
That's all really good. And it's similar to stuff that I've heard from other people. Like, is there anybody that you could point to, like whether they were in your family or friends or whatever, like did anybody impact you through that journey where you're like, this guy gave me great advice and this kind of changed the course of my career? Like, can you point to any moment like that?
For sure. I think both of my parents, it was always, don't break your word. If you tell someone you're going to be somewhere, be there no matter what. And I see that in our industry today, not all the time, but I'll see, something happens. Someone is supposed to meet someone at a certain time and they don't show up, or they're a half an hour late. Now, granted, LA traffic is pretty bad. So, sometimes, but I think, our commutes are a lot shorter, right? We're on Zoom. So we're not commuting, on the 101 to the 405 to the 23 to the 118. That's how they talk, here in California and travel, as opposed to what exit in New Jersey, which will always stay with me. It's, my commute to my computer is down the stairs from my bedroom into my home office. So there's no traffic, there's no excuse. So I think, always showing up no matter what. It's 90% of the battle, right? If you're showing up in front of, someone like yourself or a customer or prospect or an internal person, they know and can be confident that you're reliable and they can count on you. And everyone wants to work with someone they can count on. They don't want to work with someone that may flake out or, says they're going to do one thing and does another. So I think that's really been it. Just always show up, because if you leave a stone unturned, you never know what could have been, in life and professional world, in the professional world, and whatever it is that you're looking at.
I have a story. I don't know if I've told it on the podcast. So I'm gonna tell it because the guy. So when we worked for Creative Realities, I started out. I was just becoming an engineer. This is prior to you coming on. And the COO there at the time, his name was Drew Grolinger. I've actually had him on the podcast. He was managing. I was doing a project down in Texas, and I went down there, and the project was fucked 6 ways to Sunday, right? Like it was just, there was not one thing that went right on this thing, and it was my first one. And I remember calling my wife from the bathroom at the job site. And I was like, I think I might quit. Like, I think I might leave, call them and be like, this is not for me. I made a mistake. Like, put me back in the warehouse. Like, I don't belong here. Right. And she was like, look, I'll support you, but like, I think you're selling yourself short. It can't be that bad. I'm like, I cannot stress to you that like this, I'm on the Titanic right now. Like, this is not like, it's so bad. And Drew called me and he's like, how's it going down there? And I guess just the inflection in my voice and all the problems that I had, he's like, I'm coming down tomorrow. He's like, I want to see how it's going. Like, I'll be there. Pick me up at the airport. So I'm thinking like, I'm getting fired. Like, this is it, right? Like, somebody's coming to bail me out. So he came down and we spent the next 3 days going through all the problems, one at a clip. Like, he would literally sit down with me at 1 a.m. and I'd explain to him what was going on. And he's like, well, what would you do to fix that? What can we do? What are our options? Where can we go? And each thing we worked through, and he was just probing me, right? And he'd sit there and do stuff, but like, he was asking me. And I remember going to a TGI Fridays at the end of the trip. And he's like, you figured all this out on your own. Like, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of helped you organize it. He's like, you got to peel this stuff back like an onion. He goes, we did it one step at a time, but like, you fixed it. We got it back on track. Places working. This is how they go. Like, this is what the job is. And it's like, if you want to do this, you've got to be okay with that feeling. And like, I just want to remind you, you pulled yourself out. There was nobody here to help you. Like, this was it. And I remember going back to the office, and you remember the office. It was a wild culture. It was a wild place. And I remember walking into the company meeting. My wife's calling me, screaming at me. She's like, you've been gone for 2 weeks. Like, why are you going to the office for a company meeting? I'm like, I gotta be there. And I walked in, and the owner was there, the CEO, right? And, my hair's up and like, crazy. And, he walks out of the meeting and he goes, hey, I heard that job was pretty big shit show. And I was like, yeah, we got it together though. It was good. He's like, good job. Pats me on the back, walks away. And I said to Dave Ruvel, I'm like, that's it? He goes, that's it, man. Like, that's how they go. Welcome to being an engineer. And like, it was that moment that I realized, like, it was one of the things that changed my career, where I was like, this guy just taught me something that it's like, I have to stick it out, even if I think I can't do it. And it would, like, if it wasn't for him coming down there and doing that, I probably would have either figured it out and quit, or felt really bad about myself, or like, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that moment. And I can point back to it and go like, those guys were good guys for teaching those lessons. And it's something that, like, I feel like, it's amazing how those little moments will then, travel with you, right?
Oh yeah, you realize how thick your skin could be, and what you can handle in situations like that where you're really stressed out and you don't think it's something you could do, and then you push forward and you make it happen. It's just it's amazing. Moments like that really show you who you are. So no, that's cool. Similar story I'll never forget. When I was at Creative Realities, we had a job. It was at Legacy Place. So Legacy Place, for those that aren't familiar, is an outdoor mall in Dedham, Massachusetts. Well, we had an install that I helped some of our team with, which was essentially putting in these giant enclosures with TV screens, essentially sideways, and Mac Minis attached to them, where we had to dig holes in like freezing cold temperatures in Dedham, Massachusetts. So it's February. It's not only freezing cold, probably negative temperature, but it's also wet. So it's like freezing cold. It's wet. It's so uncomfortable. I'm there. I'm like, I'm the intern. What am I doing? And I'm running to Whole Foods to get people coffee and breakfast, and this buffet and that buffet, within the Whole Foods grocery store. And I'm coming out. I'm like, thank God for Whole Foods, because I'd literally freeze to death out here doing this. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to see the different things that within Creative Realities the company did, and it was a great place to really cut my teeth and learn.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a wild company at the time. Startups, early 2000s, technologies like just really becoming. It was a cool time, like just becoming mature. So, what does somebody have to do to grab your attention? Like I'm sure you're getting sold as much as you're selling. Like, what does somebody have to do to grab your attention and be like, this guy knows what he's talking about, or like, I trust this person? Like, give me what your opinion is on that.
No, totally. I think someone's got to be able to see me and say, this is my ideal customer profile. This is exactly who I want to come after. I want to do my research on this person, look at their LinkedIn, understand them a little bit, and then, come off right away to the races, essentially knowing who I am. And just by going through my LinkedIn, seeing, hey, I saw you went to college in New Jersey. I saw that you did a radio show at, William Patterson University in New Jersey. And then you also played this sport and that sport, and that you've worked at this company or that company. And, maybe we graduate at the same time, or something like that, where I'm like, okay, this person actually really looked into me to understand me, as opposed to just some canned message or email that really doesn't speak to anyone. There was just a name change after the hi or hello.
Yeah.
So that's always been something for me. It's like, if you want to grab my attention, speak to something to me specifically, and customize and craft the message, as opposed to just some generic message that's been sent to, all of these other folks.
Do you have like a favorite question that somebody's asked you, or that has brought up either in a sales meeting or to you or in an interview, that you were like, that was really good, that one got me?
So I have a favorite question to ask, and it's essentially, it can go many different ways, but in a business dealing, like, what is it going to take to get your business, or what is it going to take to close this deal? And when it was finding my current role, it was, hey, like, is there anything else I need to do to get this, deal sealed, like, for me to get this job, and what is it going to take, and essentially, when can I start? I always say it's the ABCs, always be closing, right? So it's always asking those questions where you're trying to get to the next step, because I like to say no one ever got anything without asking, right? So I'm always asking questions, and I'm genuinely curious about everything. So I think that being curious, whether it's in a meeting or an interview or whatever it is, just being curious and wanting to know more, that's just in my nature. I don't know if it's because my mom was nosy and would look out peek out the blinds and over the neighbor. But I've always been, genuinely curious to understand and learn more. And so I feel like that's definitely helped me in my career. So just always asking questions in general, but trying to get to the next step, those questions.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't even think I ask that at the end of sales calls where it's like, what more do I have to do? I'm going to steal that one for sure. Like, so you and I both know Joe Hasenzel. You mentioned him earlier. He was an executive that we both worked with, and he pushed this whole idea. There was a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and EQ and all that kind of stuff. Like, what when you're evaluating either someone you're talking to or a subordinate or somebody like that, like, how do you evaluate that EQ part where you're like, is this person emotionally unhinged, or are we on the same wavelength? Like, where do they sit on that spectrum, right? Like, what's your way of evaluating that? And like, do you even think about that?
Totally. If someone starts crying in the middle of any conversation, I immediately exit the room. Now, I think for me, professionally, I look for charisma, likability, and drive. And usually that comes right off the page. And I think if you could see that right away and then understand that someone knows how to read the room. In the restaurant industry, I learned it for free, essentially working. You have to approach every table knowing that, you're going to get a different response from a different person, but you have to be able to go with the flow and essentially be a chameleon to those people. And that's really been what's worked for me in business. And I think, without that, and then also, having some intelligence and, general knowledge of your solution, that's all great. But without hunger and persistence, it's hard to close deals. It's hard to do business. And I've always had a sense of urgency that drives me forward. So I think some of those things coupled with EQ, they're really important in business and just in life. And I've carried that with me from, the beginning of my career.
No, I can't say enough about the person you are. Like, we've gone in and out of communication over the last, 15 years or whatever, but like you're really good about connecting with people, and your personality is infectious, and I think you have a natural ability to kind of connect with people, and you have a lot of EQ about yourself, so you should feel good about that as well. So where can people find out more about you? Like, where can we connect with Christopher Romaine if we want to follow more about you or get in touch with you? Like, how does that work?
Yes, please find me on MySpace. I still have a great song that goes in my my page. You have to listen to music that I like only, and there's no other option. No, that's great, Tom. I appreciate that. Thank you for the plug. So, generally, I post almost on a daily basis on LinkedIn, content relevant to the cybersecurity industry, content relevant to technology, and just content relevant to my professional life and what I've been doing. And so you can find all of that and any of that on LinkedIn through my LinkedIn profile.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, listen, is there anything else that I can do to add value for you or get out to the audience? Is there a message that you want to leave anybody with, or how did you have fun on this thing?
No, this was great. I definitely enjoyed it. And I think, it's really great to catch up with old friends, and that person is a genuine friend because it's like you never stop talking to them. It's like you saw them yesterday. And so our rapport has never changed. We've always, joked around and had a good time. and made light of both personal and professional life experiences. And I think, the one message that I would have for anyone, whether it's entry level or, at the tail end of your career, is just be genuine and be yourself. And by doing that alone, it'll take you, far beyond your wildest dreams. And where I sit today, I mean, I could have never imagined being here 11 years ago, but here we are. So I'm just grateful to you for having me on your podcast, and I can't wait to share it with friends and family and those professional colleagues on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, for sure. Me too. So for the audience, we appreciate you tuning in to Café Technika, where we explore the technology world and how people operate and how it might impact their lives. Hopefully this has been inspirational for you. Our message is always to reach back to the time before the internet, pull those things forward, and make a better culture and a better future for everybody. Chris, I really appreciate you coming on here, sharing your story. I think it's super inspirational, and I hope there's kids or something that find this and they chase what you've chased, because I think we need more of that here in the country. We need more positivity. And I appreciate everybody for listening. We have great shows coming up. I know we've had a little hiatus. Things get busy, but we're going to have more folks coming on here, exploring, telling me and Chris that we don't know what the hell we're talking about and giving us new tidbits of information. So thank you for listening, and please stay tuned.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
You got it.
Oops. Bye-bye.